Welcome back to the Creative Rise podcast. It's actually just me, Christy, today. This is a little solo episode that I'm doing because I got a message from a girl a couple weeks ago as I was planning and shooting a summer campaign for LaCroix, and it was this massive shoot. It was really cool, tons of models, location, everything. And I was kind of giving little behind the scene updates on like, here's what I'm doing right here, blah, blah, blah. And I had a girl DM me and she said, hey, can you actually just like lay out 4 shooting brands? Like, what does that process even look like on the back end? Like, how do you plan something? What are your systems? What do you do? Like, I want to do this, but I'm like, it's all murky of like what actually happens behind the scenes for a brand shoot in order to make it happen. And I was like, that's such a great question. I love that she's asking that because I feel like most people just ask how to land the deal, but not necessarily what do you do after you land the deal? How do you make it go so well with a client? How do you make sure you kill it for them so that you get hired back and that you get referred and that you continue to just do great stuff and great work for clients? Because ultimately, that's why we're in business, to give them a great product and experience. So I loved the question so much. I did a bunch of Instagram stories about it, but then I thought, hey, let's just turn this into a podcast. This would be something that I think would be awesome and valuable for a bunch of people. And I'm also going to tie it into the fact that it's not just these kind of like tips and steps that I'm going to give you don't just apply to the brand world. They also apply to the wedding world. So many of you know that I was a wedding photographer for so many years. And then I also shot brands kind of like behind the scenes. Like nobody really knew that I shot brands. I just did it sort of like on the side. And then I fully transitioned into being a full-time commercial photographer and out of weddings. But I think that there are so many valuable things that you can see between both industries that I'm really excited to talk about. But before I get into that, I want to talk about a little update on Creative Rise that Joey and I are so excited about. We realized that we've had 11 rounds of the 6-week mastermind. So over the last 4 years or whatever it has been, we've had 11 rounds, which means we have over 300 graduates from the Creative Rise Mastermind, which is so cool. And every single person is like top-notch creative, like incredible people, kind, supportive, no gatekeeping, like just awesome people. And they've been naturally kind of connecting with each other, which we honestly didn't expect. We were like, okay, people are going to be in their round. It's great. But people started actually connecting with people from other rounds, traveling together, shooting together, passing off jobs together, having all of these like awesome friendships getting kindled. And so we were like, man, we have never had like a reunion where every Creative Rise grad can get together and actually meet each other for the first time. And so that's what we did this last Thursday. And it was an absolute blast. We hosted a workshop that was literally for alumni only. And Joey and I actually also got to reveal something that we've been working on for the last year, which is an alumni community. It's a monthly community that is available only to graduates of the 6-week mastermind. So we just launched that, and I am so excited for the people who have jumped into that already. It's been overwhelming and so cool, and we're so excited to get started with that. My favorite part is that honestly, just people get to meet from every round and help each other out and help them move forward in their business 365 days a year. Like that is so cool. They all have like the foundation of the 6 weeks, but now they get to jump into this like year-long relationship with each other. It's really cool. So we're so excited for what this is going to look like for this year for all those alumni grads. It's going to be awesome. So if you're a grad and you haven't even heard about this yet, maybe you didn't get like the emails or whatever, just shoot us a DM. We'd love to tell you about it and just give you the opportunity to jump in. We really would love to have you there. But yeah, let's jump into the podcast. This is going to be, again, very tactical. I'm literally going to go like step by step, and I hope that this is helpful. So grab a pen, grab paper, grab a notebook, and take some notes because I think this might be helpful for your next brand or wedding shoot and hopefully increase the experience of whoever you're serving, which is going to be awesome. So I want to kind of go through exactly what I do from right after I get like essentially hired. Like I'm going to throw in a couple things on like pricing that we'd probably talk about beforehand, but I think it's worth mentioning post in case you do jump into a job and you're like, shoot, do I pay for models? Like, do I do this? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but we're going to start after you get booked, after you get hired, okay? So step 1, and I also want to preface this with saying, I used to not be super good at this process. I felt like I always gave a really like relational, awesome experience, but I feel like when it comes to like a lot of the strategy, that's something I totally had to grow in. And now I feel that's like one of my biggest competitive edges when it comes to brands. And when it comes to working with brands is this strategy side of it that is really not hard to learn. And it's something that is going to be so impressive to clients that you work with. And so this is my step number one. I do not start planning anything, literally anything, no locations, no models, no anything until I do this one step. This is like a do not pass go unless you have done this step. And that step is find out the company's objectives. Now, you might be thinking, wait, that sounds really bland, or like, of course, they hired me for a photo shoot. Like, that is the objective. But I just want to tell you that the reason they hired you is not just for a photo shoot. There's always like a deeper reason, a more important reason of why they are hiring you, why they are even putting on this shoot to begin with. And so what you got to do is you got to figure out what is the objective? What is the reason they are hiring you? So is it, you got to go kind of like first level deep is, hey, what is the heck this whole thing for? Is it to sell more of their products? Is it to reach a new age demographic? Is it to introduce a new line? Is it to showcase a new value they have? Maybe they're like really into sustainability. And so this whole campaign is to show that, not trying to sell more of their product technically, right? Now, it all usually ends up dwindling down to the core idea that they want to sell more of whatever it is. But there's oftentimes another objective that helps support that. So you got to figure out, why are they even running this campaign to begin with? Is it any one of those things? Okay, so that's like literally the first step is like, why are you doing this? It's obviously not just for fun. It's obviously for a purpose. So let's get super clear on what that is, because that will then predict and tell me what I need to do when it comes to hiring models, mood boarding, planning, directing, all of that kind of stuff, okay? So that is the first purpose. What is like the greater purpose of the shoot? And then the secondary part of that is not only what's the greater purpose of the shoot, but let's zero in on where is this content being used, okay? Now, this may sound really nitty gritty. You maybe are like, oh, right now I just deliver 150 images or 300 images, and they can kind of just like pick and choose if they want vertical or horizontal, and like that's it. But the question you really want to be asking is, okay, where is this going to be placed? Where is this content going to be used? Now, is it going to be used for a billboard somewhere? It's like one hero image for one ad. Or is it they want a library of social content for them to use all over social? Is it they're completely redesigning their website, and so they need photos to go across all their pages, including about me, including all of those things? Is it paid advertising? Because again, how you shoot for paid advertising is oftentimes different than what you do for organic advertising. Maybe you're shooting videos and you have to have different hooks for the same video in order for them to test when it comes to paid advertising. All of these questions on where is the content actually going is going to help you choose how to shoot it, what you need to do strategy-wise to shoot it, and questions that you need to ask this person. So for instance, like if it was one ad for a billboard, you're going to shoot so differently than if it's just a library of organic content for socials, right? So that's a great question to ask in this introductory meeting, as I like to call it, a little bit of discovery call, asking what's the greater purpose, and then also what is the objective. Now, also in this call, again, this is like a 30-minute call. This isn't like some long drawn out process. This is literally a 30-minute call. You ask those two questions, and then you also ask, this is my favorite question to ask, because it always just brings out exactly what you need to know in order to kill it for a client, is what would a home run look like? If you could snap your fingers and this was done perfectly, flawlessly, can you describe to me what that would look like? Everyone has in their minds, and even if they kind of stumble over their words as they're telling you about it, but they have in their mind what the ideal outcome is. And this is where they start to talk about that. And it starts to get really cool, because you can start to realize, oh, like, wow, I didn't actually know that they would want it to be this way or edited this way or shot this way or things like that, which then leads into conversation around, hey, what are the product do's and don'ts? Like, what are the things about the product? So for instance, with LaCroix, they always need, obviously, no fingers over labels, flavor, anything like that. It always needs to be pointed directly towards the camera, not like the nutrition side, right? But it's like, these are good things to know, because sometimes when you're shooting and you're not really thinking, and if that's not in your mind, that like an image is unusable if the label is not perfectly directed towards the camera, it's going to make you shoot differently. Or for instance, they always want their cans to be hyper condensated. It cannot have that shiny look. It's got to be in ice overnight. It's got to be in ice throughout the shoot. We're changing out cans like literally every 3 minutes to make sure that they are the most condensated looking ever, because I know that that's what they want. That's a literal product do's and don'ts. It also comes into like, hey, we're not crossing brands, right? Like if I'm shooting with one brand, I don't have other name brands visually in the shoot, right? Like a lot of companies have a lot of specifications around what can and cannot be used. And one simple thing can make the greatest image ever completely unusable if you don't think about what the product's do's and don'ts are, and if you're not clear on the brand guidelines from them. So you want to make sure you ask about brand product do's and don'ts and brand guidelines. And where this also leads into the conversation is, hey, what do you stylistically want this to look like? Every company has an idea of what they want it to look like even as, simple as like, hey, what facial expressions do you want in your shoot? I remember one time we were shooting a campaign for DUER. They were putting the images up in their new store in LA. They were having like this big thing. And so they needed a campaign in order to have us deliver a bunch of images and some video. But the images were going to go literally printed on walls in their new store that was coming in LA. So when we were talking to the new marketing director, he was like, hey, so like I'm kind of new to DUER. So we have actually this new artistic vision that we're pushing, and we're really excited about it. And we were having this call that I was asking all of these questions. And here's the thing is I actually, before hopping on that call, had a completely different idea in mind of what I was going to shoot. I was like, oh, I'm going to do really happy. I'm going to like gather inspiration from their current Instagram. I'm going to bring all that together. And I had a full idea of what I wanted to shoot. But then after the call with him, I was like, whoa, I would have been dead wrong. Like they probably would have not used hardly any of these images if I would have gone what I thought they wanted. And he was like, no, I'm actually trying to push it in a completely different way. And so that was such an important moment for me to go, oh my gosh, we can't just assume based off of like current trends that they're doing or current images that they're doing. Maybe they're choosing you because they want something different, but you need the space in order to be able to tell that to them and to figure out what that looks like. So make sure you're having this conversation, again, a 30-minute conversation with a mood board or whatever it is, with a creative director, a marketing manager, or maybe it's the founder, depending on the size of the company. But make sure you're talking to a good decision maker in order to get all of these details. This one step, and I know that was long, but this one step will save you so many hours of just like, oh my gosh, are they going to like them? Are they not going to like them? Are they going to use them? Getting hired back, all that kind of stuff. So that is step one, is getting on that 30-minute call and having the objectives conversation. Now, the part that I will actually just slip into that part of the conversation, even though I would probably have this conversation before I'm actually hired, is the pricing side of things in the sense of expenses for the shoot. Now, you need to figure out, okay, am I a photographer showing up to a pre-designed shoot by their team, or am I a photographer showing up to nothing? So therefore, I need to campaign and design the campaign and be the producer and the director for this entire shoot. Now, I tend to do the producing, directing, planning, all that kind of stuff myself. And then I rarely ever just show up to something that's fully done. That's just like some reason, that's just how everything that I've done has gone, which I actually really love. I love to be from the start all the way to the finish rather than just to show up and shoot. And there's also more money in that, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. If you have the ability to campaign, direct, all of that kind of stuff, and hire out people in order to be able to do that, you will be a huge asset to a company if you can do all of those things. But the question is, if you are designing the campaign, you have to figure out, okay, what are we doing with expenses? Is the company paying for it? Do I pay for it? Do I hold that balance until the company pays me? When do I pay the models? All that kind of stuff. And I will say it differs for every single company. So some companies are like, no, just send us all of the invoices. We will take care of all of that. But I have to say, from personal experience, most of the time it's, hey, why don't you plan all of that and then just invoice us after, which is exactly what I do. So I will do all of the hiring. I will do all of the model searching. I will have all the props. I'll buy it all. And then I invoice at the end. And here's what I also like to tell the company when it comes to expenses and all that kind of stuff is that it's a flat expense, right? Like I'm not upcharging them for like, oh, I'm doing this, this, and this. I'm like, in my package price is for me shooting, but then also for me designing the campaign. Therefore, I'm not upcharging them with models or whatever, and a percent's going to me. It's all just, that is exactly what it is. Here are the receipts. this is what I'm getting reimbursed by. I think you'll build a lot more trust with a company if you go that direction rather than just trying to like upcharge or whatever. It just feels sneaky and weird. Just make sure you're getting paid enough on your package price so that you'll actually want to do the job, okay? And then make sure if you are taking the expenses on that you clear the budget with the company before you start spending money, okay? So clear the budget. They're gonna wanna know an estimated budget of what that looks like. So you might be like, hey, I think the estimated expenses are gonna be $3,000, and that's gonna go for models and vendors and locations and permits and blah, 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 blah. So make sure that you have the estimated budget cleared with the company. And if you have to go over it, clear it with the company before you start spending more money. So if you realize, oh gosh, we didn't anticipate this permit fee or whatever it is, do you have that conversation with the company before you start overspending and then get a big bill at the very end to the company and they are not happy. You don't want to do that. Okay, so now that we've talked about the objectives, we talked about if you're designing a campaign or if you're just coming to shoot it, and then about pricing and expenses. Now we go into actually planning the shoot, which is a really fun part. And I want to also say, if this really intimidates you, don't worry. First of all, you probably know more than you think you know. And sometimes we just have the imposter syndrome. We just need to go and do it. But you can also hire people who are good at this stuff. So I have hired so many people in my career to help with prop styling, to help with, hey, I have no idea I have no idea how to build a balloon arch. Like, I'm not going to even try. I want this to be great. So let's outsource a vendor for that. Or let's hire a picnic company to set up something really beautiful. Or I've outsourced so many parts of campaign design. And honestly, the more people you bring in, it tends to be a lot better. So if you've got the budget for it, do it. It's awesome. But the first thing that I always focus on before doing anything else is figuring out a location. I don't even choose a date until I have a location. I know it can be really quick to be like texting friends of like, oh, are you available? Are you available for this shoot? Whatever. And then all of a sudden you're stuck without a location. That's not fun. So you want to figure out, do they want indoor? Do they want outdoor? Is it a mix of both? And if you're going outdoor, let's say you're going to like a national park or you're going somewhere really fun, then you're like, oh, this would be the perfect spot. We have to shoot this company here. Make sure you get a permit, okay? This is something that you learn from the wedding space, that permits are a very real thing. Even if you're just doing someone's engagement shoot, oftentimes, most of the time, you need a permit, even if you're shooting outside. So national parks, most of the time, require permits. A lot of public beaches really require a permit. I feel like some of those are most like stressful, like very permit requiring type of places. If you're in like an outdoor mall or if you're in anywhere like that, like a shopping center or like a little touristy area, in order to shoot a commercial paid shoot, you usually have to have a permit. And I'm not going to say that I haven't skirted the permit system for sure. I have definitely had my fair share of I got away with it moments, but then also I didn't get away with it and I got cited for rock climbing without proper rock climbing gear with a couple one time in Laguna Beach. And there have just been some times where I've just been like, I don't know, tried to figure it out along the way. But here's what I will say. I've become, the more years I've been a part of the creative space, the more conservative I've gotten on this exact issue, because especially in the wedding space, but then especially in the brand space as well, you oftentimes can't repeat those dates. And if you are somewhere where there is a permit that's actually required and you get in trouble and all of a sudden the shoot stops, everyone has to stop, you no longer can shoot there anymore, either you've ruined someone's wedding day, or two, you have wasted a ton of money from the brand. Like, you've hired models, you've paid for vendors, you've paid for time, like all that kind of stuff. You're wasting the time and money, and it could have just easily been solved by a permit. So if you're wanting to shoot outdoors, permits can be really easy to find. Like, for instance, we shot at Lido Island down in Newport Beach for a brand a couple months ago, glōci, and we had to pay $1,000 for 1 hour on Lido Island. And I had to clear with the company. I was like, hey, are you guys cool with this? They're like, yes, let's do it for 1 hour. And we would have 100% gotten caught if we had not gotten the permit, because there were security guards everywhere that day. And that's something you wouldn't normally think about. So make sure you get permits. That's all I will say about that. And then when it comes to indoor, good places to kind of research and find if you're needing something indoor, whether it's the studio space or kind of like a model looking home or whatever that is. Pier space is a really great option. I use that a lot. Super popular. Lots of options everywhere. But if there's nothing on Peerspace, I oftentimes look at Airbnbs actually, but you have to make sure that you message the owner and make sure that they're okay with you shooting commercially at their property. You can sometimes even ask for like an hourly rate rather than having to do a full night booking. And then oftentimes your friends just have really cool houses that you want to use or really great backyards, or that's also a really great option depending on what you are trying to shoot. But when it comes to indoor venues, like venues, Airbnbs, Peerspace, oftentimes they'll ask you for a COI, which is a certificate of insurance. Now, this is like a liability thing with their property. So sometimes it'll be like, hey, we need you to have insurance up to $3 million or whatever it is. And that's where if you've got business insurance, which if you're creative, you should have business insurance. Just ask your local insurance agent if they have business insurance. Get business insurance. You should be able to get a copy of a COI with their address listed on it that you can send to the company, and then you will be golden, okay? But if you don't have business insurance or you're like, I don't think I have that type of coverage with my insurance, you can actually get like a day insurance package that you can just search online. It's super easy. So make sure indoor, outdoor, you got permits, and then you make sure you have a certificate of insurance, which is awesome. So then now let's get into one of the fun parts, picking models, okay? Now, models make the world go round. Literally, you guys, models have one of the hardest jobs. I feel like I had no idea how hard models worked until I became a photographer. Like until I became a producer, all of that kind of stuff. I was like, oh, modeling just seems like the easiest thing. You just are like naturally beautiful and you stand in front of a camera. And then no. I realized how valuable they are. So first off, I want to say really, really appreciate your models. Like pay them well. Feed them, give them water, give them breaks, treat them with so much respect because they are really bringing the brand to life for you. And then this also goes for the case of weddings. If you've got a couple that you're shooting an engagement shoot, all that kind of stuff, treat them so well. And you will just find that the whole experience goes so much better. But ways that I find models, one, I have to figure out, is it just stills or am I also shooting video? Because there is a big difference between someone who feels comfortable in front of like a photo camera, but someone who has to then now act on a video. Very, very different. So if you're shooting just photos, you can kind of just be like a little bit more like, hey, if you're, just a beautiful model, you will probably do just fine in photos. If you're good at directing them, which being from the wedding space really helps figuring out how to direct people who feel uncomfortable in front of the camera. So if you're from the wedding space, getting in the brand space is probably going to be a great idea if you want to try it. But when it comes to video, sometimes you need someone who has a little bit more experience. So trying to find people who have experience modeling is a feat, though, if you are not in a space where you naturally know a lot of people who model. So ways to find people who model. I try to stay away from all agencies personally. Not to say anything bad about agencies or bad about models who are represented by agents. It just tends to be this like really long back and forth. I'm talking with a third party person. It feels like they're getting a ton of the money. I'm like, I'd rather just pay a model directly. It just ends up being this long negotiation email fest back and forth, and I'm just not really into that. But I do have an agency that I do like to work with because they're kind of not an agency. It's almost more like a social media for models, which that sounds really weird, but it kind of feels like that. Not affiliated at all. This is not an ad. I just genuinely have heard of this from a friend who has a athletic company in New York, and she said she used it and I used it and I was like, whoa, this is life-changing. It's called New Book Models, and newbookmodels.com, I believe it is. And you can create a profile as like a photographer, a videographer, a producer, and then models come in and they create their own profiles, and you can literally search by location, eye color, height, you can put in so many filters of what the company is looking for in models. And this is a really easy way to get a ton of diversity in your shoots, and then also get people that are interested in modeling who actually do this for a living. So they're all over the US. I'm not sure if they're outside of the US yet, but really great resource for you photographers, videographers that are looking for models in a really just like easy way. You can also do job postings, and anytime I do a job posting, I get like 70 responses, which is super cool. So that's a great way to find models. More organic ways to find models, I will say New Book does take a little bit of a percentage, but it's not super high. But if you were looking for like Instagram or anything like that, that's also a really great way to find like micro influencers, people that might be like a little bit, I'm not going to say low budget because obviously there are tons of people on Instagram who are professional models, of course, but this also is a great way to find people who are just hungry for jobs, micro influencers on Instagram. So ways that you can find people like that. Oftentimes I search other photographers of wherever I'm shooting. So like if I'm shooting in Southern California, I'll often look up like different Southern California, either portrait photographers or even wedding photographers, people that shoot people. And I'll just like full on stalk and just go like guerrilla marketing mode of like finding tagged photos, all that kind of stuff. That's a great way. You can also look up like local boutiques. Oftentimes they have models in their like photos and they'll tag them or they'll comment on them or whatever. That's another great way to find people. I would stray away from just like searching like Los Angeles models on Instagram and trying to just get like a crazy algorithm. It just be warned. It just a lot of crazy stuff comes out with that. So I've also hired people to find models for me. That's like a great just thing to push off of your plate. It can take a really long time when it comes to models. So those are some of my favorite ways to find models. And then I would also say when it comes to prep work with models, making sure they know everything they need to know before the shoot. It's, hey, do they need to wear their own clothes? Like, are you providing clothing, or is this something where they need to come with hair and makeup done, with outfits already predetermined, all that kind of stuff? So make sure if they are wearing their own clothes that you give them really clear guidelines, and also checking with the company on like what clothing is appropriate for their company marketing, because there are oftentimes very strong opinions about that. So you want to make sure that you clear that with the company, and then send a really specific outfit mood board to your models, and then ask for them to send the actual outfits to you for clearance before the shoot. It's like worst if you get on the shoot and you're like, oh shoot, they can't wear that. Like that's not going to work, or like the color's not going to work or whatever. So clear that with them. And then also sending them a schedule, asking them to arrive 30 minutes before you even need them. Like before they even need to be like even changing to get ready for the first set. You literally just want to have them 30 minutes. Traffic happens, things happen, life happens. Basically, your models and all your vendors should be there at least 30 minutes before they even need to start being there. So I like to always buffer that into the timing and also pay them for those 30 minutes as well. And then I also send over waivers for liability, all that kind of stuff. If you need to sign contracts, make sure that's in there as well. And anything else that the company needs for anybody who's going to be participating on set. And that, again, goes for all vendors, prop stylists, all that kind of stuff. And then making sure that I also prep for food on the set. So if we're going over a meal time, I make sure to provide a meal. I always make sure to have tons of waters on set. I make sure to have snacks, granola bars, healthy things. I have a lot of dietary variety in case anyone has restrictions. I make sure to have all that there. Happy, fed, hydrated people are way happier on set. So you want to make sure that you have all that kind of stuff. And then last but not least, before the shoot, I do two more things. I make sure to have a scheduled shot list. So not just a shot list of what I need, but actually intertwined within the schedule of what I have. Because again, everyone's there for only a certain amount of hours. And so it's one thing to be like, oh, I have a schedule and then I have a shot list. I like to make a scheduled shot list. So it's like, hey, from this time to this time, we're changing into our outfits. We're making sure everything's good for the first set. And then from this time to this time, it's scene one. And I want to talk about this for just a second. I'll usually, like for instance, with the last LaCroix shoot, I had 4 different scenes. So what that means is normally I feel like a lot of people will just go, hey, and I've done this before too, of like, oh, there's one scene and I'm going to deliver 200 images in like this one backyard setup, and it's going to be just a bunch of different angles of the same shot, which is like very wedding photographer of me, right? I've done that. I used to do that as a wedding photographer, and then I was doing that as a brand photographer at first until I realized that's actually a ton of work for the brand to have to go through a bunch of images, and especially when a bunch of images just means a bunch of angles of the same image, of the same moment. And so what I started realizing is I could give a lot more value, and I can also charge more if I have a bunch of scenes where I could create a bunch of diverse images, so that it's not just like, hey, you can post this for like a week or whatever. You can actually have a longevity to the content that's really diverse and usable, and I think that is just like way better. So a standard package for me would be like 30 images, 4 reels. That's super standard package for me. And I often find that I get way better responses to the 30 images than the 200 images. So you want to make sure that each one, though, is usable and diverse from the other ones. So therefore, in my set list, in my scheduled shot list, I've got 4 scenes. I have which props I need, which products I need, what exactly we're doing, what's the mood board image for it. I literally go through and create that before the shoot, whatever starts. And that saves me so much time, so much stress on shoot, so much stress of like, wait, did we use that product? Or like, oh, did we include that flavor? Or, oh, did that dress get used and we knew we needed it for this specific one? List it all out before. I promise it will make your life so much easier on set. So yeah, that is a huge one. And then I also like to scout before my shoot. So I always like to go a day before. I like to go, if I can't go, a lot of times you can't get in the day before or the week before or whatever. It's like you only have it for that. I like to then budget in an extra like 30 minutes to like an hour for like scouting. So I like literally budget that in to the time block of using the venue and the space. And that's really, really helpful. So that's all the stuff I do before the shoot. And then shoot day, this is just super quick. I like to bring everybody together. Again, I give everyone like an extra 30 minutes to like get there. And so once everybody is there, I like to bring everybody together and set the tone. I like to have a little spiel. And I did this in the wedding space. I did this when I would shoot engagements, and I do this when I shoot brands. So if you're in both of those spaces, this is going to be so helpful for you to have a little spiel ready. With weddings, it was always like, you guys, you don't need to feel awkward. Like, this is something that is just supposed to be natural. I'm not going to ask you to do anything weird. I'm not going to be like, hey, move your hand 3 inches to the right and blah, blah, blah. This is going to be really fun, really relaxed. So I just want you to take a deep breath, and it's going to be so much fun. And I walk them through what I'm going to do so that they can literally picture what they are going to do and feel way less stressed. I do the same thing with models on a shoot. I have everyone go around and introduce each other. I express them how grateful that they are there, how much models really run the world when it comes to shoots, and how we couldn't do this without them. And then I also set the tone of like, we're gonna have a ton of fun. I again express what the company wants from like an actual facial expression wise and tone of the shoot and everything like that. I basically give them like the full spiel of what it's going to look like as if they're also producing the shoot, because they are. And I have them go through all of that. I talk about the product do's and don'ts. I just make them feel all way more at ease because they can expect what to do and what not to do. And that just helps everyone execute way better on a shoot and makes everybody happy and creates a better product, which is awesome. So that's what I do. And then I go through my scheduled shot list. And honestly, most shoots go pretty smooth if I've done all of those steps, my shoots are really, really smooth. They're really fun. Obviously, you come to little hiccups, but you problem solve, and they're just a blast. So if you shoot weddings, you guys, brands can be so much fun. I promise. It's not this like weird corporate-y thing. It can be so much fun. And then when it comes to like payment, I usually Venmo my models, or if the company's going to pay them, we do it that way. And then if I book them through NewBook, I pay them through NewBook. And then, yeah, that's basically it, you guys. So that's from like start to finish. I'm sure I'm missing a couple things, but hopefully you at least grabbed a few things out of there that you can apply to your own business, whether it's in the wedding space or the brand space. And I hope this was so helpful. Again, I know this is super step-by-step and nitty-gritty, but again, hope you guys loved it. And let me know if you have any questions on like anything more specific. I'd be so happy to help. And thank you guys for listening. And we will see you next week when we come out with another episode. Again, we have episodes every single week on how to help grow your creative business, how to help you succeed in doing what you love, which is what Joey and I are the most passionate about. So if you love this show, if you love this episode, share it with a friend, post on your Instagram story, tag us at Creative Rise. We'd love to say hello. And yeah, if you have any ideas of stuff that you would love for us to talk about, if you've got specific questions, we are always looking for podcast ideas that will help serve our community even better. So if you've got some questions, please shoot us a DM. We'd love to hear it. And yeah, we'll see you next week, guys. Thanks.